Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond, and London, England, as well as Paris, France. We love you in Canada and Africa, but there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful June the 9th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, it's one of those troubling and empty days that you get that emptiness inside of you in America. And, you know, you search for a reason why we can't get change in this country after all of these years, but also want to say thank you to all the frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, the doctors, and the first responders for the tremendous job you're doing during this COVID-19 battle.
We really want to say thank you. I want to say also today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars anywhere in the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Apple TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Also want to say we make sure we're doing the Big C pause. I even hear a lot of other media doing the pause now. I want to make sure we pay homage to our Veterans Crisis Hotline. Never want to pause on them. They are experienced at helping veterans and their loved ones get through problems, Big C. Why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, as we think of our troubled veteran population here in the United States, that's losing some 22 members a day to suicide because they're not getting the social and mental and financially help that solely should be awarded to them, Charlton. We think about the veterans today in America, and they're treated like the African-American veterans when they came back from World War II, when they were given many promises, and they came home to empty hopes.
Yeah.
But as we look at our veterans today, with all of the resources in this country, Charlton, and they're void of the veterans, they can't get them. When you think about just having the simple, basic, everyday necessities, and we have so many veterans that are homeless, that don't have the opportunity to call the Veterans National Suicide Prevention Hotline number, Charlton. When your home is a sidewalk or underneath a bridge and you don't have running water, you don't have electricity, and these veterans seem to find no way out, of mental and social relief, Charlton, and too many of them are succumbing to suicide. We have to find a way as a nation to care more about all of the people of the United States, Charlton.
Very well said. In the land of the free and the home of the brave, 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. Also, I'm very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T, Uverse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants. And when you reach out to them, tell them Big C sent you. Our goal is simple: recruit 100 real estate brokers, put their property listings on TV, just like McDonald's does it. Car dealerships do it. Sports teams are going to start doing it again too. Watch TV work for your real estate. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. For those of you looking for opportunities in real estate, go to BigCSports.pacwm.com. That's BigCSports.pacwm.com, and you can see opportunities there also. Big C, I know there's so much going on. I think the world is, we've always talked about the world never set on the British Empire, and now the world never sets on the I Can't Breathe, Black Lives Matter movement. The world never sets on Big C Sports. Before we touch on some things that I think are, some important, I still offer my thoughts and prayers to the Floyd family and a lot of people going through issues. I know services can be sad, but at the same time, this one has really touched people, every soul that seems all over the world. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's an horrific event that continues to manifest itself every day of the black community, Charlton. As we think about George Floyd's death and, his final resting coming home party today, Charlton, celebration that the black community often does. Will this end? And it's not going to end, Charlton. I mean, it seemed like a seminal moment when everybody watches a man being murdered on television live, Charlton. It wasn't a replay of something. It was live that people witnessed this man's death. And it hit a nerve, but how deep is that nerve that it's going to hit? Because this is not the first black death that has been manifested by the police departments around the United States, Charlton, nor will it be the last. I mean, the George Floyd incident, there was an incident quite similar to his incident a year ago, Charleston, in Austin, Texas, where police officers pulled over a black man because he did not dim his headlights. The police pursued him down the road, and ironically, there was a film crew riding with the police. They were making one of those police shows for television.
Yeah.
And the police officers pulled this man over, Charlton. He gets out of his car with his hands in the air, and he was trying to figure out why was he being pulled over. He'd already dimmed his headlights.
Yeah.
But the police weren't good. That wasn't good enough for the police. They slammed him to the ground, Charlton. They were on top of him. He's telling them he could not breathe. They tased him a couple times, Charlton. And the man died on the spot before the paramedics arrived. He was on the ground 20 minutes non-responsive before the paramedics arrived. They killed him on the spot, Charlton, a year ago in Austin, Texas. So what we saw with George Floyd and continue to see in the peaceful protest since his death is a continuation of what the police do in this country to black men, that they feel that black men are fear. Not only that, Charlton, today in New Jersey, a police officer, a white police officer, killed a black motorist, shot him 6 times, Charlton, after pulling him over and having him on the side of the road for 45 minutes.
Wow.
The man, asking, were they going to come to his car or what were they going to do? The police officer decided, because the man got out of his car asking him questions, that was insufficient. He shoots the man 6 times, Charlton. I don't know what the threat is that you have to unload 6 rounds of ammunition into a living human being, saying that you were in fear for your life, and he was unarmed. You had already patted him down, Charlton. You'd had him on the hood of the car and everything, and allowed him to get back in his car. He gets out trying to find out what you're doing, and because he's asking you, you get agitated, so you're in fear of your life, and you take another black life, Charlton. So as we look at this, when will it stop? George Floyd, I would love to see resolution coming from his death, Charlton, and some type of reform to law enforcement.
Yeah.
But I don't feel it in my lifetime. I fear when my children are out, Charlton. I fear when I am out as an older black male, large black male, that, I'm an imposing figure, and I hear that from people wherever I go. So, there is no answer as long as there's black and white. We can see white people protest, but until the changes take place in the Oval Office and the Senate of the United States, Charlton, this is just going to be deja vu in America.
Yeah, it's really something when we talk about that. I remember, I didn't have the same outcome, obviously, but that's a shame when people say probable cause. I remember driving. I was actually in Walnut Creek, California, over there in the East Bay, not that far from Oakland and San Francisco. And I'll never forget, I was driving on a street called South Main, and it's over by the mall. And I had seen a police car make a U-turn. It was just starting to get dark. I remember I had my lights on, so I clicked my lights on, and then I turned them down on dim, because when they were on bright. Well, the police car made a U-turn. It came and pulled me over. There was 2 other squad cars that pulled up. They kept me there for about 10 minutes. Driver's license was good. Had insurance, that was good. Registration's good. But they kept me there for about 10 minutes, and they were just in the back talking about whatever they talk about. And they finally let me go. And I was just telling the officer as he told me, well, you had your high beams on. I said, no, I turned them off. I just turned my lights on. He said, well, when I saw them, they were on. I said, okay, your officer. Well, I turned them off. Is everything else okay? And he said, yeah, well, just make sure you keep your light beams down. As if that's a crime. And as I saw other people driving by, they were white. Some of them didn't even have their lights on as it was just starting to get dark. But there was a moment that I experienced also. And seeing these things, Big C, it reminds me of so many times where it's happened. And thank God I didn't get hurt by it. But I don't want to have to live like that. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, well, you're black. You have no choice. This is what this country is, Charlton. There's 2 types of justice. There's black justice and there's whites that don't have to worry about justice, because justice looks like them. The people who administer justice look like them. But as a black man, there's three things that are for sure in life. That's taxes, death, and trouble. You're going to run into it, regardless of what you do in life, Charlton. People are going to approach you with unclean hands and not good intentions.
Yeah.
And we should not have to live like that as a culture. When people are always saying, well, you know, you guys shouldn't feel that way. You know, all cops are not bad. Nobody said all cops are not bad.
Right.
All black people are not bad either. But why do we get marginalized in society? I mean, it's occurred for 400 years in this country that we get marginalized. We are the only culture in America that has to fight for every stance we have and every inch that we gain in society. It doesn't make any difference whether it's socially, whether it's athletically, Charlton, whether it's politically. We have to fight. You know, today is a voting day around America in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Charlton, there's backups in the lines. The voting machines are not working. All types of things to oppress
really?
the black and minority vote in this troubled time, because you know that they're available to vote because they're not working and people have been at home because of the pandemic. So there's more people that can get to the voting polls early. The voting polls couldn't open up. They were undermanned. That you're doing everything you can to oppress and frustrate the minority people of this country. It should not be that hard. You know, you always talk about this passage from the Constitution, and like I tell you, it's a damn lie all the time, because they're not allowing that to happen in this country even 250 years after the document's written.
Yeah.
They're still not allowing equal access and equal justice in America.
Yeah, that's why we got to vote, Big C. I know everybody has their own story. I do want to thank a good friend of mine. She actually lives over in the North Bay, Marin County. She gave me a call today to see how things were going. She's a Caucasian lady, and she understands how I was talking about race, and her heart bleeds for what's happened to George Floyd. And we've had those conversations before, and she's lamented some things that she's lost a couple of friends that were Caucasian when President Obama was elected, because she saw a lot of racism in her white liberal friends, Big C, that she had never seen before, because everybody was cool. And then when the black man was the leader, the commander-in-chief, a lot of them had a lot of latent racism that really came out behind closed doors. But they would smile in my face, Big C, but she was just asking how I was doing. I told her I'm doing fine. At some point in time, we all gotta pray, and hopefully we can be treated the way we treat others, and hopefully that's a good thing. So I appreciate the dialogue. I want to go to this sports legend of ours, and I know sports will solve a lot of problems. The Boston Celtics legend, Bill Russell, he's wanting President Trump. I mean, think about it. It takes courage to kneel, and Russell retweeted that Trump on Saturday said he's divisive and a coward for his comments on kneeling during the national anthem, and that it takes true courage to stand for what is right. And I just think it's ironic that we have a president of the United States that ran from serving this country 5 times with military deferments, but he wants to be the guy that stands up for our country that he wouldn't even fight for. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, it's easy when there's no pressure on you, when you can hide behind something and say that you stand for something. And we've heard that from this individual in the White House for the last 3 years. And you know, he has this base that is strung out on racism.
Yeah.
When you hear white society, they say, well, what do you people want? We gave you a black president who served 2 terms. You weren't happy with the 8 years he was in there? We've given you black senators. We've given you black congressmen. We've given you a ton of black athletes that have become millionaires. What more do you people want? We've given you some mayors. We've given you some governors. What more do you people want? You know, when will you have enough? When will we have enough when we stop dying in the street, Charlton?
Yeah.
That's when we'll have enough. We'll have enough when we have equality in this country, Charlton. We'll have enough when we have equal rights in this country, Charlton, when we don't have to demand our civil liberties in the street through marching, Charlton.
Yeah.
That's when we'll have enough. You know, when you think about the oppression that has occurred in this country for 400 years, and it's come from one race, Charlton, the white race has oppressed people in this country for 400 years. They took the land from the Native Americans. They put them on reservations. They enslaved the Africans when they were brought over here, Charlton, from Africa. They made them slaves. You think about what they did in this country during World War II when they took California from the Japanese American citizens that were born in California, put them in internment camps for 3 years.
Yeah.
And when they were let out, Charlton, they did not give them their land back.
No.
Walt Disney, that's where Disneyland is in California, in the middle of what was Japanese land, Charlton, Japanese American land in California. White people became rich off of them also.
Yeah.
So as you look at America, how it was built, it's become very rich off of 3 different cultures, actually 4, Charlton. The Hispanic culture also, they ran them down into Mexico in pushing them out of the United States. So when you look at the atrocities that have been done in this country,
yeah,
and people say, why are you angry, why are you mad, why are you upset? When you turn on the news basically every night, Charlton, now, and you see a black person being killed by police officers, or you see black people being mistreated by police officers, that's why you get angry, because you see it on the news. We see it live.
Yeah. I have, I know a lot of people, different colors, different culture. I have a white, somewhat social friend of mine, and he was saying, you know, Charlton, my heart bleeds for what's going on, but you got to also, black people commit more crimes than black people, so why does everyone want to blame the police? And I just said to him, I said, man, police are sworn to protect and serve the public.
But let me inject something on what he said. Black people commit more crimes on black people. What was he trying to do? He was trying to deflect from the problem.
Well,
we understand that there's white people. Think about it. White people are the largest drug abusers in America. They're the largest drug abusers in America. Are they locked up for it? No. There's more opioid and Oxycontin deaths and addictions from white people than there is marijuana usage from blacks in America.
Yeah.
But they're not locked up for it, Charlton.
Well, he thought that he was telling me he's not racist because he dates black women. I said, those women are dumb, but it's okay. People can do what they want to do because he dates black women, so therefore he's not racist, even though he has negative images of the women he's trying to get in bed with. But it's all fair in love and war. I want to ask your thoughts. Bubba Wallace, the only African-American NASCAR driver, is calling for a ban on the Confederate flag, which I'm sure would make my white conservative friend upset, even though he dates black women, the ones that are dumb enough to date him. He says that there's no place anymore for these Confederate flags in sports anymore. You know, over in Europe, some white people tore down a slave trader who had they had a statue of him. They threw it in the river, Big C. So are we going to see the same effort in the South at these racetracks, Big C? Your thoughts?
No, you will not, Charlton, because if you look around the South, the Confederate flag still flies at some state capitals. It is not going to be abolished from NASCAR. That's one of the bastions that they still own, as they say, a good old boy.
Yeah.
That's their safe haven. So they're not going to ban the Confederate flag. If the United States government will not ban the Confederate flag, Charlton, because it is divisive and racist, and when it's still flown at some of the capitals in the United States and some of the southern states, Charlton, they're not going to ban it from a racetrack.
Yeah, it's almost as if, I tell you, the whole world is doing the Big C Sports platform because it's just real. You know, I listened to Al Sharpton he gave the eulogy today, and I try not to watch too much of it because it makes me sad, and everybody has their own thing of what they like watching. But he talked about, you know how we take the Big C pause? And Al Sharpton said something today at the service, Big C, and he mentioned that God gave us life, and when we breathe, you know, without breathing, there is no life. It's like God's wind is blowing into everybody that's alive to keep us breathing. And when we stop breathing, then the body dies. And I just thought that was so prescient because we do our Big C pause thing, and we've been asking everyone to take a pause. But when you pause, you also stop breathing just for a moment. And I hope that some way people don't have to always agree. Like my friend, a social friend, he dates black women, so he says he's not racist because he sleeps with black women. Doesn't make any sense to me. And I said those women are dumb. At the same time, I think we got to have this uncomfortable conversations. If not, it'll go back to what my friends have told me over the past. Everybody's smiling in your face, grinning and laughing until you're out of the room. And so I appreciate what Bubba Wallace talked about. I want to ask you one thought, though. As we jump to the NFL, how much does an NFL owner need? I mean, how much more do they need before they stand up in a partnership with the players on their teams and their thoughts, the same way I asked Big C's thoughts, and their thoughts and emotions and lifestyles and cultures? How much does that matter, Big C? That makes sense to you? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, we heard 4 years ago that the owners were in fear if they stood in correlation with the players, that it might cost them some money. And how much money do they need, Charlton? How many 300 yacht? How many 300-foot yachts you need?
Yeah.
How many private jets do you need?
Yeah.
How many helicopters do you need? How many mansions do you need, Charlton? How many vacation retreats do you need to own?
Yeah.
You know, how many billions are enough for you? You're talking about standing by a player and a culture for what they stand for.
Yeah.
It's going to cost you a few dollars. Your few dollars, you're not worried about them losing family members out in the street. And I remember shortly after that, Charlton, Anquan Bolden, who was leading the coalition, he lost his cousin to police violence, who was shot to death by the police officers, Charlton. So, I mean, every black player in the NFL knows somebody or has been affected by police violence, Charlton, to someone close to them. And that's a fact. So as you look around the league and these owners talk about, well, we're worried about people not coming to the stadium. What? They're worried about people not showing up, Charlton. People show up because you win, not because you lose. They're going to show up at the stadium.
Yeah.
But the product that you put out there on the field is driven by these black players. And you said you're not concerned about their social needs because you gave them a black president, you gave them some black senators. But the racial divide in the NFL from an administration perspective, you don't respect black people in that aspect. You don't feel that they have the leadership qualities, that they can only follow and perform, that they cannot guide and direct.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. And I love the dialogue that everybody's having. And when we ask for the solution, I'm always solution-based too, but it's about liberty and justice for all. So when an NFL owner says, we don't want you guys taking a knee because people who look like us, they won't support people who want liberty and justice for all, that's a horrible indictment of a white population. I want to bring up this one more point, and I want to ask you something about it. When you talk about what do owners want, I remember we talked about Colin Kaepernick, how he lost a job for trying to help avoid what's happened. And we talked about how people lose their lives at a traffic stop for whatever reason. When Eric Gardner's family, they got a settlement. He was the original I Can't Breathe. He got a settlement with New York City for $5.9 million for the wrongful death caused by a police officer. They choked him out. I guess he was selling cigarettes or whatever it was. And you juxtapose that to Erin Andrews. She was awarded $55 million by a jury, all-white jury, for being seen naked by a white man. That's 9 times the amount of damages for a white woman who was seen without her clothes on, as opposed to a man who can't breathe anymore. They gave him $5.9 million for his family, $55 million for a white lady who was seen naked, and people say that's justice. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, she's virtuous. I mean, that's a white woman in America. That's how society is, Charlton. When you read that part about liberty and justice for all, it is fake, Charlton. It is liberty and justice for white people. White people, they say justice is blind. No, justice is not blind in America. Justice is white in America, Charlton, honestly. So you can take that scarf off of Lady Liberty, because Erin Andrews, to get that kind of money for exposing her body, versus Eric Gardner losing his life for selling loose cigarettes, Charlton, loose cigarettes.
Yeah.
And his life was taken from him in front of the world, Charlton. There was video where it went worldwide. You know, it was viral of him being killed by these police officers, and the officers who were just put on death duty after killing him. Black life has no value when it comes to that, because I think society has become immune to it, Charlton. They become desensitized. Even though we've witnessed what happened with George Floyd, Charlton, white society has moved on in total as far as what they're going to get back to in everyday life. I mean, the president used his name as a stunt one day in the Rose Garden. But now he's deflecting to other things, Charlton. He hasn't talked about we need to come together as a country. We need to find common ground. We need to de-escalate what's going on. The president hasn't looked at that in any kind of way. So all that did, Charlton, to those people who believe in him and follow him, is manifest the problem even more. When we look at the black death, every day on the news, basically, depending on where you are in the country, you see it. You see it. And so white people have gotten to the point to say they don't care. That's the white perspective on it, y'all. They don't care because it's not happening to them and to their kids. And they always have the excuse, well, they had to do something wrong because the police officers are not going to do that. They're all good people.
You know, it's interesting when Donald Trump, and I'm glad that this was brought up to me from a white woman, how much of a racist he is. And some of her white liberal friends are the same kind of people, especially when they have to listen to someone. It's not an indictment against all white people, but this came from a white lady who's very well off, Big C. I want to bring up this thought, too. There were 7 women that have sued the NCAA over sexual assault. They're not going to get awarded $55 million because some of them are black. The NCAA is trying to avoid the discussion. You know, no one asked those women if they stood for the flag before they were sexually assaulted by some Power 5 conferences. I'm not going to throw the schools out there, but because it's more than just the schools that are in the paper about it. And people say, well, the Black Lives Matter thing, you know, why are we always talking about Black Lives Matter? And I just ask anyone, especially my friend who says he's not racist because he dates black women that are dumb enough to date him, do you know anyone that gets $55 million for being looked at, and you have a college women that are, over 7 of them, that are suing the NCAA and the universities for sexual assault, and the schools are trying to cover it up? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, you can get up on the stand, Charlton, with pigtails and blonde hair and blue eyes and talking about how emotionally distraught you are, that you're scared to go to a hotel and stay now, even though that's how you get paid, is going to hotels for your job every game that you go to.
Yeah.
And you can play the lie, Charlton, all you want. But think about this. You talk about the 7 ladies that suing the NCAA.
College girls.
Think about the Boy Scouts of America, Charlton. The Boy Scouts of America, a very synonymous white organization,
Yeah.
that filed bankruptcy because over 7,500 former scouts sued for
Wow.
sexual assault to the Boy Scouts of America. This predominantly Anglo-Saxon organization, Charlton, that these boys were being molested by their troop leaders.
Yeah.
And, you know, these are those things that they don't want to bring out. So if you got these scout leaders, and many of these scout leaders are law enforcement people, Charlton, that assaulted these young boys over the decades. So the Boy Scouts of America filed bankruptcy so that they would not have to pay these kids that they sexually assaulted for decades.
Yeah.
These are the atrocities that go on in America that people can get away from through going through civil actions, Charlton. They say, okay, we'll just go file bankruptcy so we have no money to give you for what we did to you, although we did enjoy ourselves.
Yeah, and we know the clergy, when the priests molest boys, they just send them to a different part of the world. I want to ask you your thoughts, too, because in the sports world, as painful as things are, I know the sports world is a way we can galvanize because the churches are segregated, politics is segregated. Around a sports event, people will congregate and break bread. NBA News Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban, as well as Coach Popovich for the San Antonio Spurs. Mark Cuban, owner of the Dallas Mavericks, and he says, as I always say, there's good and bad people, but this is his words, that decent white Americans have to solve what's going on with race, and they must have uncomfortable conversations about race. I know he follows Big C Sports. I know that some sports companies, you know, they might be missing the fact that, isn't this guy big, tall, and fast, Big C? Can you see how fast he runs the 40? Ooh, can he jump really high? But we're talking about things that will actually help all people. Give me your thoughts on Mark Cuban juxtaposed to Donald Trump saying that Floyd must be happy. Mr. Floyd's happy because the economy is doing better, in his opinion. Cuban says we got to talk about this, Big C. Your thoughts?
But Charlton, how do you define a decent white person? You know, to say, okay, what's a decent white person? What's a decent black person? The person who will not stand for liberty and justice for all, Charlton, is an indecent person.
Yeah.
And so when you look at society as a whole, and they're not standing up, that they have witnessed this, Charlton, for decades. The men of power in this country, when they don't, you know, disavow what the president is saying, does that make it a decent white person, Charlton? The political leaders of this country who make decisions for all of us on our way of life, when the president, even the 75-year-old man that was in Buffalo that the police pushed down,
yeah,
the president said that, you know, he was a leader in Antifa and he was trying to block the police radio scanners. How could he block the police radio scanners? And that he was faking when he fell down and busted his head open, Charlton. The president come out with those lies, and the people who watch the president and believe in him will believe in that. So you tell me that decent white people have to have the conversation. So where have these decent white people been for 400 years? Tell me that.
Well, as we know, abolitionists were also Caucasian, and there were some Jewish Americans that helped establish the NAACP. I know it takes everybody. It's not a monolithic group. Neither are African Americans. I want to come up on the Big C pause. Our show is going by too fast. Is the clock going faster? I know this is leap year, Big C. Let's take the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. And when we come back, I want to just mention some things that I think are important that will actually help our society do better. It's called having honest dialogue. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back from the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. You can follow Big C Sports anywhere in the world, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast, also Apple Podcast and Google Podcast. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away, and I really appreciate the way things are going with Big C Sports. From sea to shining sea, but the world never sets on the Big C Sports Podcast, Big C. People actually from Russia, people from New Zealand, people from Australia, Dubai, Japan, of course, the United States of America, Latin America. The whole world of media is having the same conversations that you and I have been having for 5 years. We just talk, it's real talk. But I want to ask you about one of your friends, because you always get on me about what's going on with West Coast sports, Big C, and West Coast football. Why are people leaving the West Coast? I told you, when you give somebody a paper bag full of money and they're hungry, sometimes they'll go and follow that paper bag, Big C. So your friend, Dabo Swinney, Clemson football coach, he addressed an issue with his strength coach using the N-word. The one that Francis Scott Key loved, okay, for the Stars and Stripes, Big C. And used it in practice against African-American players. He also addressed the issue of players protesting at the Student Center, where it's named after a slave owner, Tom Sawyer, who owned over 90 slaves. I'm sure he had sex with a lot of them with impunity. They called it rape back then, but they still got a center named after him. He also wore a T-shirt, and it was at a pool party over the weekend. This is for all these black athletes that want to go down there and play for that man. It says football matters. Okay? That's an insult to the young black kids that have made him a multi-millionaire. Because when they're not running around in orange and purple uniforms, they're just like George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery. They've been preyed on to, and how insensitive it is for a person like Dabo Swinney. But sometimes when people show you who they are, at some time we got to believe them, Big C. Your thoughts?
I mean, it was very shallow and hollow from Dabo Swinney with his statements, Charlton. He made the statement he doesn't condone that type of language, and if he knows about that coach would be fired on the spot. Well, that coach, if he did it 2 years ago, Charlton, he did it, a year ago, and he did it several months ago.
Yeah.
It's his modus operandi, and Dabo Swinney has kept him on his staff, and he's been okay with that going on. So, you talk about a coach being totally insensitive because he has impunity. Here's a guy who's making close to $10 million a year off the labor of athletes on his campus. And then he wants to get on his players about going to a protest to talk about taking the name of a former slave owner off of a student union building on campus.
Yeah.
These are players who are socially aware, Charlton. They're politically aware of the wrongdoing of the past, and they're trying to correct it. But the coach is okay. He's comfortable with it. But then to denigrate the Lives Matter emblem, Charlton,
yeah.
Black Lives Matter has been pushed across this country forever as you look about it. And he's going to put up there football matter. This is what you and I have talked about, that these coaches only care about you as a football player. How much can you get me a salary increase and a contract increase for in length of term?
Yeah.
This is how they look at players. He didn't say lives matter. He says football matters.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a damn if his players go out and get COVID-19, Charlton, and end up ill and taken home to their families.
Yeah.
As long as you come there to that practice field, get his paycheck coming through every month, that's all that matters to him.
Yeah, Mr. Djokovic, the great tennis player, he said that the U.S. Open may not be realistic because of the issues surrounding COVID-19. He's talking about his health. But these young African-American players, they can't wait to get out there and run for a guy that when they say Black Lives Matter, that might save their lives and their teammates. The white coach says, football matters, boy. I don't make money for Black Lives Matter. I make money having you guys run up and down that football field, tackling each other and trading sweat. Big C, another one of your friends, I'm not trying to throw you out, okay? I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. But sometimes, if the bus stops, you got to get on it. NBA basketball, Madison Square Garden, one of your friends. You know what? They made a statement about George Floyd for social justice and freedom of speech. And it was Mr. Doolin, I believe, one of your friends that I guess you golf with every now and then. But he told his African-American athlete, shut up! He did the Laura Ingraham, shut up and dribble. He told him, don't you dare get out there and talk about things that will keep your kids safe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is insensitivity. We talked about this earlier when we said, how much do these white NFL owners need? What is enough financially for them?
Yeah.
And the only thing that you're concerned about is your bottom line dollar, not the social and mental health of your players, Charlton, is that you're so disemboweled with them as a person. You only look at them as a commodity. The slave trade has not ended, Charlton. It is not. These owners own these players, Charlton. They own the right to whether they can exist in that athletic field or not, from college through professional ball. I mean, they're basically sharecroppers. When you look at a professional athlete, he is a sharecropper. He is getting a little bit of what that owner's getting a lot of. When you look at a collegiate athlete, he's a slave on the plantation, Charlton, because he's getting none of what that coach is getting all of. And so when you look at Dolan, the owner of the New York Knicks and the Madison Square Garden, he released a statement that a fifth grader could have written, Charlton.
Yeah.
And that fifth grader could have written that statement in 5 minutes, but it took him 2 weeks to release that. The total insensitivity of a professional owner, Charlton, as far as to the plight and the economics of those who are beneath him. We saw it when he got rid of one of the former players out of Madison Square Garden, Charles Oakley, and had him arrested, Charlton, that he was desensitive to the blacks that were not working for him at that point.
Yeah. As I mentioned, 1927, I was talking to my Caucasian friend. I would say she's very decent and honest, and it'd be nice if more people were like her. She doesn't hide behind skin color. But we talked about Donald Trump's dad, Fred Trump, was arrested in 1927 at a Ku Klux Klan rally, and he said he wasn't a member of the Klan. He just liked going to their rallies. Big C, read between the line. But New York Knicks.
He liked the cross burning and the smell of wood stuff. Okay, and gasoline.
Yeah, he like my friend. I'm not racist. I date black women. Yeah, the ones that are dumb and don't read. Big C, Madison Square Garden. They did issue the statement 8 days after you mentioned, after the Knicks owner sent an email. This is to all women. We always do on our show. There's no excuse for sexual assault or domestic violence against men or women. But when this is 2020, when an NBA owner who makes his money from black men for the most part, when he says they will not publicly comment on the outrage that followed George Floyd's death or any sexual assault. So women, you're on your own. Even my white female friends that are closet bigots too, because they say they're liberal, but they can't stand it when people shout down racism. They say, well, that's not me. I have nothing to do with it. At the same time, on Tuesday, as you mentioned, Madison Square Garden, sports and entertainment companies, Big C, said that every one of us has a role to play in creating a more just and equal society. That they said something I had to read twice. It says, there is no room for racism, bigotry, violence, and hate. We stand with all of those who act for a positive change, after saying they will not make a comment about the outrage. Is that like a double entendre? Is that speaking with both sides of your mouth, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you have to understand, if white society was appalled with all of the injustice that has been going on towards the minorities that is occurring in America, they could abolish it. Every time they go to the polls, they could abolish it. But they do not. They're comfortable, Charlton. You're comfortable whether you're in your trailer park or whether you're in your gated community. You're comfortable.
Yeah.
When you look at the most downtrodden of white people in America, those who are oppressed, who do not have, that live below the poverty line, Charlton, they are still white. They have more of an advantage in America than a middle-class black person.
Yeah.
Because they have a better chance at living, Charlton, if they're stopped by the police. You think about all of the white people in the Midwest, Charlton, that are constantly caught, with opioids by the police.
Yeah.
Whether they're ODing or sitting there, got it on their possession. The police don't shoot them.
No.
But you catch a black man with a quarter ounce of weed, they'll shoot him. You think about the injustice that are given to one part of society. You're sitting there and you're saving this white guy's life. You're carrying these injection pens, and I can't remember that narco or whatever they are. These injection pens that will save their lives when they're ODing.
Yeah.
But you got a black man down that's telling you he can't breathe, and you said, "Oh well, you better take your last breath."
Yeah.
This is the difference of how cops treat the different ethnic groups in America. You will hold a black man down till he stops breathing, but yet you find a white man who is not breathing, and you're trying to breathe life back into him.
Yeah.
You're doing CPR. So when you think about the injustice of the law system, Charlton, of how it treats the different ethnicities in America, this is what pisses people off. When you can sit there and watch a white cop kill a black man, but that same white cop, Charlton, is trying to save that white life that tried to kill themselves.
I heard an attorney last night talking about that. I guess he's trying to defend some of the police officers. He said he was laughing. Well, the guy was big and he was threatening and he was menacing and he may have had something inside of his system. I said, what a joke. They'll find a jury that most likely will do something to make people say, oh my God, I can't believe it's happening again. I want to ask you, just in a sidebar, there are 27 amendments to the United States Constitution. The first 10 are the Bill of Rights in order to form a more perfect union. And it takes the House, the Senate, and Congress, and the President to make law. But I want to ask you a question, because I'm going to speak to all people. Sports is important because it brings us together. In sports, politics, the Middle Passage from Harriet Tubman to the Underground Railroad to Rosa Parks, the Civil Rights Movement, and maybe even the next Vice President of the United States of America in the White House, black women are the largest voting bloc of the Democratic Party since 1998. And a lot like my social friend, Caucasian guy that says, I'm not racist, I date black women. You know how oftentimes you don't hear much from women of color on TV. There's a lot of talk that there may be a good choice for Joe Biden, if people get out and vote, to bring an African-American woman to help as vice president of this country. There's been so many moments in time where they've been raped through the Middle Passage. Their children have been sold off, raped, beaten, incarcerated with the new Jim Crow called the criminal justice system. I would love to see, just because it's black doesn't mean she's salient. But I think that this country, it may benefit at least from optics, Big C, or is that not enough, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you always need the optics. You always need the growth. But until you talk about this living, breathing document is enacted by white society, who controls it, Charlton? When you think about 1776, when that Constitution was written out, blacks were not included in that Constitution, Charlton. That's the thing you have to understand. And so as white society perpetuated itself and they owned these blacks as property, they were not people. They never thought about it. Not until 1868, Charlton, 28 years, 72 years later, did they give blacks consideration. But that was after Reconstruction, when the 14th Amendment was written, Charlton, that granted citizenship to all the people that were born here in America. That were born here in America, but they still did not get citizenship, Charlton. They were still treated as outcasts and less than people. So when those people were writing that Constitution, Charlton, by talking about we the people in order to form a more perfect union, when they got through writing that in 1776, let me know which one of them went out to their slaves and said, I'm not going to abuse you anymore. I'm going to let you go. You no longer have to work for me and be beaten by me. I am no longer going to own you or sell your children. So since that was a living and breathing document, I believe those slaves out there were living and breathing people. But those people who wrote that document did not care or consider those slaves people and did nothing to better their lives, Charlton. Those people who wrote that Constitution did nothing to better the lives of slaves in America. And so that was manifested on through their generations, Charlton, of people that they were their offspring. And so when you look at yourself and you look at every black person in America that was born in America that came from descendants of those slaves, Charlton, None of your ancestry belongs to you. None of it. The ancestry you have is the ancestry that your slave owner gave to your forbearing parents, Charlton, your great-great-great-grandparents, Charlton. The name that they went along in life with was the name of their slave owner, not the name of their heritage from their motherland, Charlton. All of that was taken away from them. All that they had is their history, is the branding of that slave name that they have when they write down on a document what their last name is. That's their continuation of slavery in the United States.
But where I disagree with you, Big C, if you're in other countries, if you're in Russia, if you're in China, you have no constitution. You do what they say. That's why I think it's important. We got to look at where we are now. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States of America. It's just like a baby can be born into the world. It may be 21 inches long. By the time it's 25, he's 6'3", 250 pounds. They say, well, he's not the same. No, it's not the same. It evolves. But I want to ask you a question on something.
Let me ask you something first.
Yes.
You said to ourselves in what you were just reading, okay?
Yeah.
Were the slaves considered part of that, y'all? But these were white men talking about themselves.
I know,
They did not include the slaves. And there
C,
was no provision in that first 10 amendments that they wrote, Charlton, that included the slaves as being a part of that or enjoying any of those liberties.
That's why you got to understand what an amendment is. It means you can change things. Without an amendment, it would still be the same way it was written. But I want to, in the sake of time, because you got to change things, just like they're trying to change this. People talk about defunding the police department. For reform is what I believe, not to get rid of them. They want to reform it to have better relationships so that all people feel safe in dealing with law enforcement and helping good officers stay safe also, and then prosecuting the bad ones. That's changed, and that may take an amendment. That wasn't around in 1776, Big C, or 1787. They have the amendment because they're trying to get that passed now, Big C. Your thoughts?
But they're not going to put an amendment into the Constitution for that, Charlton. It's going to become a state issue. They're not going to make it a federal issue because every time you have a police investigation, it goes back to an internal investigation. So the people inside the force are policing themselves to say whether it's right or wrong. And when your police department is all white, Charlton, they're not going to convict a fellow white officer for killing a black individual outside of their administration, Charlton. They need to have reform. You cannot abolish the police in the United States. That would be a wrong gesture in any state in the United States. We need police. Police are an integral part of American society, and they're part of the fabric of this country.
Yeah.
It's just that we have some bad police that you can no longer protect under the blue shield, Charlton. They cannot be protected behind a badge. When you do wrong, you do wrong. And when you arrest people, Charlton, you have to arrest that police officer with the same impunity. You charge him later, but you arrest him on probable cause. When you sit there and you watch a police officer, as today in New Jersey, shoot a man 6 times on a roadside stop, Charlton, because he's questioning you, how long is he going to be there? This is after over 40 minutes that you got him on the roadside, and he gets out of the car and asks you why, and you said that he's threatening and menacing because he's black.
Yeah.
You know, you can't use that he's threatening and menacing. Because look how many large black men that there are in America. Every time we see a black man being killed at the hands of the police, that he's threatening and menacing. I guess Tamir Rice was threatening and menacing, the 12-year-old boy that was in Cleveland playing in the park, and the police rolled up because a white person called the cops on him because he had a pellet gun. And the police rolled up and shot him twice without even speaking to him. They just shot him, a 12-year-old boy, because he looked threatening and menacing out in the snow, Charlton, in the park by himself.
Yeah, but in the final 3 minutes, it takes all people, black and white, to change it, and we got to go forward or we can go backward. But God won't let us go backward into the room, Big C. On Tuesday, the Senate confirmed General Charles Q. Brown as the next Chief of Staff for the United States Air Force, making him the first African-American leader of a military service. And my father also served in the Air Force, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that's promising to see blacks advance throughout the military when we think about the injustices that were done to black men after World War II, returning from fighting for this country, Charlton, and to have this type of promotion. And it was a 98-0 vote, Charlton, that confirmed him into this position, the highest ranking African American in military history in the Air Force in the United States of America, Charlton. And I want to go back to that point about black men being menacing when they're saying that they have a gun or something, Charlton. I saw hundreds of white men weeks ago in the state capitol in Michigan with battle fatigues and long rifles, Charlton.
Yeah.
And no white police officer said any of those men looked menacing.
No.
That's how black and white this country is, Charlton, that you walk up with Army gear, Charlton, and no police officer said that you looked menacing, and no one was fired on, Charlton.
Yeah, I know. It has to, from sea to shining sea and all over the world, people of all colors are standing up. POTUS wants to address police reform coming up. However, there are no black women in his administration, only 2 black men. Police reform deals with overwhelming social injustice that's committed against black Americans, the prison industrial complex, and again, no African American women to advise him. He's like my social white friend that he says, I date black women, I'm not prejudiced. I said, only for the women who don't read. Big C, in the last minute, we have the NFL news, the Cleveland Browns. They welcome 6 new staff to help deal with diversity, and also golf, one of your favorite pastimes, golf to hold a 8-minute and 46-second moment of silence in honor of George Floyd and social justice this weekend at the Colonial Tournament. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, to have social justice in America, you have to make the table equal. You have to equal the playing surface. And until you put an equal number of blacks in all of these positions to talk about the social injustice and disparity that we have in this country, Charlton, you'll never have a change, because the people that are in the position now to change anything, they don't see this problem. This problem does not happen to them or their kids. You see little white kids get pulled over for speeding all the time, Charlton. There's no gun pulled on them.
No.
They find out, that you Dabu Sweeney's son. Come on, let me take you home.
Yeah.
I know you had too much to drink, but just follow me. I'll make sure you get home to your family and stuff. But golf giving a 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence, Charlton. We don't need silence in this country anymore, Charlton. We need boisterous. We need to be vocal.
Yeah.
We need to be activists. And everybody in these sports, by taking a knee and kneeling and a moment of silence, Charlton, we've been silenced and quieted for too long in this country.
Yeah.
We have to keep this momentum going. And you have to speak this momentum, Charlton, not be silent about this momentum.
That's what I love about the Big C Sports Show. In New Zealand, rugby fans are expecting over 20,000 fans at an event on Saturday amid COVID-19. And, that's up to them and the people that deal with their safety. However, there's a surge in COVID-19 cases in Pakistan that forces them to cancel a cricket match. As we always tell you, everybody has to do their part. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, Charlton, the Washington National Guard did not remember what social distancing was. They've had dozens and dozens of members of the National Guard that have tested positive after being stationed in Washington over the past week and a half, Charlton. So we got the pandemic rising, and once again, I want to thank those frontline healthcare workers, the nurses, doctors, and first responders for all what you do every day trying to keep America safe and healthy. And, hey, sports is going to play amid this COVID-19, Charlton, and I wish that they cared more about the players than they did about that bottom line dollar.
In honor of the late George Floyd, we just thank everybody for praying. Let's bring our country together. We're going to stop the show early in honor of the memory of George Floyd. We thank you. We appreciate you. We hope that you have a super fantastic day.